There is a distinction that Viktor Frankl never tired of drawing, and that modern culture seems determined to erase: the difference between solitude and loneliness. Loneliness is a wound. It is the experience of being separated from connection you need and cannot find. It diminishes. It hollows. Frankl recognized loneliness as genuinely dangerous, not a weakness or a preference, but a signal that something essential is missing. Solitude is something else entirely. It is the chosen, or at least accepted, state of being alone with oneself, and for Frankl, it was not merely tolerable but necessary. He wrote that the neutic dimension, the specifically human capacity for self-transcendence, reflection, and meaning-making, requires silence to operate. In a life organized entirely around stimulation and social performance, the neutic dimension atrophies. Not immediately, and not visibly, but steadily, the way a muscle weakens when it is never asked to work. Frankl observed this in his clinical practice with striking regularity. Patients who filled every moment with noise, with work, entertainment, social engagements, digital distraction, were often the same patients who could not answer basic questions about what they valued, what they wanted, or what made their lives feel meaningful. The activity was real. The inner life had gone quiet from disuse. This is not a moral failing. It is a structural consequence of a culture that treats silence as a problem. The discomfort of solitude is real. When we stop moving, we encounter ourselves. And encountering ourselves means encountering our questions, our unresolved grief, our doubts about the choices we have made. Many people find this encounter unbearable, not because it is actually dangerous, but because they have never been taught that it can be survived, or that it is worth surviving. Frankl pointed to cases from the literature and from his own clinical observation of prisoners in solitary confinement, one of the most extreme environments imaginable. Some prisoners deteriorated completely, but others, and this is what interested Frankl, reported experiences that they later described as among the most clarifying of their lives. Cut off from every external distraction, they were forced into confrontation with themselves. Those who had some internal resource, a value they held, a person they loved, a question they cared about, discovered that solitude had given that resource room to expand. Those who had no such resource were left with the vacuum. The implication is not that solitary confinement is good. It is that solitude, when it is genuinely ours and not imposed by cruelty, can function as the space where meaning clarifies. The question, what do I actually want, cannot be answered in a room full of noise. The recognition this relationship matters to me more than anything tends to arrive in silence, not in the middle of a party. Frankl connected this to a broader clinical principle. The person who cannot be alone is not free. They are dependent on stimulation, on validation, on the constant presence of others to confirm their existence. This is the existential equivalent of the patient who can only breathe with external support. The capacity for solitude is the capacity for inner independence, and Frankl saw inner independence as a prerequisite for authentic meaning. He was careful to distinguish this from introversion or antisocial preference. Solitude is not about avoiding people. It is about being able to return to yourself between encounters with the world. The person who has developed this capacity actually engages more fully with others, because they are not using others to escape themselves. They come to relationships from a place of relative wholeness rather than existential need. The practical implication is simple and demanding. Build silence into your life deliberately. Not as a productivity technique. Not as a wellness trend. As an existential practice, the regular act of sitting with yourself long enough to hear what you actually think. If that encounter is uncomfortable, Frankl would say, good. That discomfort is information. It is the gap between the life you are living and the meaning you have not yet found. Subscribe to The Psychology of Viktor Frankl to explore more of his timeless ideas.